The city of Irvine is known for its master planned communities designed to create optimal residential living. And perhaps no other place is a better example of that ideal than the village of Woodbridge. It all began in the early 1970s. New homeowners were entering the market, forcing the Irvine company to make a change. The company decided to listen and learn from potential buyers and then create an entire community designed to match those needs. This new marketing focus was a key to the creation of the village of Woodbridge.
The Irvine company made up its mind that it needed to change, that it no longer could respond to builders' demands, but needed to shift and instead of looking at that seller, look at the marketplace and look at the cues from the marketplace that was changing and evolving as an indication as to what their communities for the future needed to be. And with that, the first major project that was approached that way was the village of Woodbridge. This time the whole premise of the direction for this community was taken from the marketplace. And in that, the practice of applying the concept of market segmentation was applied for the first time to the genesis of a community. Because of that, there are a whole series of evolutionary, innovative housing products that were designed specifically for this community as components of an overall mix of housing. In Woodbridge, we wanted to do something different, and one of the first things that was different was the fine-grained mix of products, and that instead of building 400 of one kind of product and just stair-stepping along as you finished a phase, you moved to the next phase and the next phase, and it was all the same product types. In this community, we intermixed housing on a finer grained mix. We didn't want to have large blocks of one kind of housing. And therefore, we came up with a different concept where we would take a neighborhood, and that neighborhood would be comprised of a series of complementary housing products, typically 3 or 4 different products in an area, and all built at the same time and marketed at the same time and delivered to consumers at the same time, so that when you finish this block of this overall community, you'd have all the families moving in simultaneously into a neighborhood, and the construction workers would move to a whole other section of the community. Therefore, you wouldn't have the conflicts of worker traffic and trucks, and most importantly, you wouldn't have a lack of a sense of place or community, that it would evolve 4 to 6 times faster than would a subdivision that was one-dimensional in its mix. We went and looked at the marketplace, talked to the consumers, and got a better understanding of what they wanted in the way of amenities and living conditions inside their house. And we're able to custom tailor each price point in the marketplace with a set of different house concepts. And then we take those house concepts and evolve them into a different form of a housing product that was customized to that marketplace. We hired a series of the more creative architects and came to them with this notion of wanting to have an innovative mix of housing that was distinctive from anything that was built in Southern California to date, and to have a broad range of appeal, and actually went ahead and designed the schematic plans for these new creative products that evolved and were introduced. And then instead of looking for a builder first, we looked for a product first, and then married it up with builders who came and expressed an interest in buying into this whole new concept for a new community and all new housing products. Another product type that we wanted to introduce was an innovative product for the main street, the arrival place that you drove into. Where I grew up in the East, when a family arrived and made their way in life and finally made a significant income, they moved to Main Street, not away from it. And neighborhoods that were more well-to-do, when you drove in, there were front doors on the street. And it was a very welcoming way of living in a community. Whereas in California, the neighborhoods that grew up were subdivisions that were carved out in a city, and there'd be a major thoroughfare, and then there would be a series of walls, and behind the walls were subdivisions of houses. And that was the optimum way of designing family-oriented communities in those days. Instead, we designed a product that would emulate the main streets of a well-to-do community, and actually designed a series of houses inside of duplex and triplex buildings, and then gave them mansion-like exterior architectures, and built a big front rolling lawn up to the house. And the main street in Woodbridge, the Yale Loop, was lined on both sides with these estate-oriented houses. And we actually went out to older, richer communities in Southern California for the architectural styles and the look of their front yards. And while it was a condominium, the community association took care of their front yards. We actually customized front yards so that there was a variety to them, so it read like this big house had one common look to its landscape, and then its neighbor would have a different look. And finally, we took the garages and put them on the back side of the house, because in most of those communities, you didn't see garage doors. The garage was around the back or in a separate building from the house. And so the concept for what was called the Woodbridge Estates was born. One of the ideas we wanted to have for this unique community was a major central recreation element. And instead of doing a park, what we did is we landed upon the concept of a lake. And the initial thoughts on it, and the planner's initial take was, well, it's another real estate lake, so you have a whole bunch of little fingers, and then you have houses lining the side of the fingers, and then that comprises your lake, a real estate lake. Before we did that, what we decided was we wanted to break the mold from that kind of a concept. And if you think about it, if you build a lake and then you line it with houses, the lake disappears. And other than the first few people who get to enjoy the lake, it virtually disappears from the community, and it's not an amenity for the rest of the community. So instead of building a lake that was designed to satisfy the desires of 250 houses, we wanted to build a community lake that would serve the interest and be available to all 3,000 residents of what was called the north portion of the village of Woodbridge. The lake for the north part of the village of Woodbridge was designed with 11 different edge conditions. Sandy beaches, rocky shores, a reed area, grass coming down to the edge, and then in addition to all those different conditions, we wanted to have some variety to it. And so in one place we wanted to have a housing project with its feet in the water. But not so much that we lost the majority of the edge, because we wanted to put a trail system that went around it that was a gathering place and turned it into a magnet for the community. And instead of running out on the streets, that people would gravitate to the lake and take the loop around the lake as a way of experiencing this community asset and this community facility. We also wanted to have a boat dock and a place for people to actually launch themselves out onto the water. And then a couple other conditions. We built a pergola out on a long dock where a number of weddings take place, into an area off of the village center. And finally, an island in the middle of the lake, and with a wood bridge that would reach that island that you had to cross over in order to get down onto this little island in the middle of the lake. And it actually ends up being an excellent place to fish. And it's a very common scene to see young kids out there with fishing poles. enjoying the opportunity to participate in this lake. The wall serves a purpose, and that is it attenuates the sound and it creates a sense of security for the community. And we were looking for a different way to accomplish the same goals. So working with our landscape architects, they came up with a whole different concept of building an earthen berm that surrounds now 3/4 of the village of Woodbridge, that is about 6 to 8 feet in height. And it's shaped and slopes up and back down into the backyards of houses inside the community. And on it we planted extensive landscaping all the way around. And so you now have this whole different form of a walled community done with an earthen berm and a landscape treatment that accomplishes the same goals. And to this day makes Woodbridge distinctive from any other community in probably Southern California. But one of the things this berm required was a massive amount of earth to build this berm. So we looked around and said, well, we're going to have to import all that dirt from somewhere. Instead, the concept was, well, why don't we dig a hole? And so we did, and there's a part of what drove this concept of a lake-oriented community. And another element we were looking at is the street pattern and the circulation patterns in the community. And an organizing device for these new neighborhoods, we came up with the concept of mini parks. In the past, most of the park elements in master plan communities were one large park. Very seldom was there a series of smaller parks, and that was the new concept. And it was this recognition that when families moved into a community and you watched the way they lived in the community, kids didn't play in the backyards. They typically would come out to the public street and find street sports to play, and that would be how you gathered together. And when a family was driving home with kids in the back of the car and they drive past the community park, they'd look over and there were their friends over at the park. And so the kids, when they got home, wouldn't even bother going in the house. They just went to the community park to catch up with their friends. So instead of hiding in big parks and in isolated areas, we broke up the park mix into small segments that were tailored to individual sets of prospective family types, and scattered them through the community and used them as an organizing device around which we would build a series of complementary products. And the shift was made to the village concept. And why the village concept? Because out of all the places that people expressed in our research that they wanted to live, it was a small town and a small town atmosphere. I want to have my family grow up where I know my neighbors, and I want to feel comfortable with being able to send my child to the grocery store to pick up a loaf of bread or a bottle of milk. And the concept that they gravitated to was this village idea. A city was too big, a community was too large of an overall notion, but what they wanted was a village, and a lot of that contributed to this whole concept of villageness. And we actually ran a long-standing advertising campaign on villageness and what it meant and why it was unique and different.
Woodbridge has always been a special place, and the Woodbridge Village Association is the unifying force that keeps the community together here. For a place designed to have recreation at its heart, the programs and facilities of the WVA give residents plenty of opportunity to get out of their homes and participate in their community.
Well, when the Irvine company hired me, I came to work almost 7 months before the first homeowner moved in, because they had started to build all the recreation facilities, and they had just beginning to fill the lake, the North Lake, as I got here. So I was involved in that and watching them, and we had to get ready for the homeowners to move in, but they were still building very rapidly. We had a board meeting and said, Bob, you need to go out and set up payroll accounts, you need to go out and get yourself an office, you need to hire landscape maintenance contractors, you need to get maintenance, and you need to get going, because we're going to start turning this stuff over to you. And then the first really staff person I hired was a recreation director. My philosophy has always been that, recreation makes a community. I went to school at San Jose State, and my degree's in recreation and park management. And so I felt that, whatever happens, we have all these facilities and not just have them sterile.
We were very concerned about how to open it up, and the way we finally decided to open it up was to have a preview period of virtually almost a month and a half, 2 months I believe, of time where we would allow people to come in, to visit the community, to see the model homes, to talk to the salespeople, but nobody was allowed to tell them what the prices were or offer anything for sale.
Come summer, I came to work, and in middle of the summer, the marketing really went into effect, and they had people and vehicles and all kinds of stuff going on, and they wanted the facilities to look like they were being used. So they came to me, and we hired people. I hired some of my staff, and they'd bring their families down, they'd swim in the lagoons. We'd hire adults that went to the adult facility and would just sunbathe and stuff in the facilities for 3 or 4 hours. And I even went to one of the colleges, I think it was Saddleback College, and got a sailboat instructor, and he taught classes out here on Saturday and Sunday, and we had some boats, so he could use our boats and his boats, and we paid him to bring his people out here and sail on the lake.
In addition, we would also take their automobile away from them. We parked them in a central parking lot. We pushed them through a welcoming center that explained the concepts of Woodbridge, and then pushed them out a back door onto trams and took them around the community to show them the community from an open air tram system that ran up and down a major loop street and went past all the model complexes.
They set up lemonade stands and things for kids at each of the parks. So when the families came to look at all of the marketing corridor, which was right down Stone Creek, where all the houses were being built, and the parks were right down the side too, that the kids would have places to go, and the families would come over and have lemonade and stuff like that, and the kids would play on the equipment. So it was just something, they just wanted to make the community look like there was people here and things were going on.
The opening day, we had a simultaneous set of 6 drawings at 6 model complexes that were offering the initial houses for sale. If my memory serves me right, about 243 houses. And we had 6,000 families show up for the grand opening event, if you can imagine. And at each one of the model complexes, there was a gathering of 300 to 500 people standing around waiting to see if their name got drawn out of a lottery box. And at a simultaneous time in the morning, all of the lottery boxes were open and drawings were started, one name pulled at a time, and people would scream and yell, and it was just a joyous experience, and it ended up being a marvelous event for all the people who attended.
I believe the first actual person moved into Woodbridge in October of '76. And the gentleman's name was Bob Orton. I'll never forget, because he was the first move-in at Culverdale. We started a recreation program. We started swimming lessons, and we started programs for adults, and it was just the start of thing. And I believe that made this community what it is today, because today even the programs here are really good and really great, and a lot of the people really enjoy it. And So that makes what it is. You know, I always told people about Woodbridge, you don't buy a home, you buy a lifestyle. And if you don't like that lifestyle, and that lifestyle, besides having fun and swimming pools and stuff like that, does have, you can't do certain things. I mean, you can't paint your house red, white, and blue, and you can't add on to your house. You can't leave your car, jack it up in your driveway. So you have to realize that there's a give and take. Homes sold originally here, if I remember right, you could have bought a kind of a condo that has a living room, dining room, and a kitchen downstairs with a bathroom, and upstairs 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Those were $20,000, $24,000. Then they were selling homes on the lakes for $250,000. So, and they're only within, you know, half a mile of each other. So we had, you know, a whole blend of different type of people come in here. And when I first came here, I know they were really concerned about that mix of people. Is it going to work? What are you going to see with the schools, and what are you going to see with the parks? And from everything that I could tell you, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody ever asked how much money you got. Is, you know, and this whole community just blended together. The kids play. They come out and play. This guy here could live in that house, and the son over there live on the lake, and it never mattered. So you never saw any of that, you know, stratus or whatever it is, a who's who and something like that. When we saw them in their environment, in our recreation programs and coming in here, everybody was the same. It started out with having we were going to have a small fireworks show, which we had, and then we were going to have a kids carnival and have games that cost pennies and stuff like that. And we basically did it ourselves and did a little stuff like that. It's mayhem today. I mean, it is what it is. There are thousands of kids that now decorate their bike, and we even have floats, and they have floats, and we give awards for floats. And about 4 or 5 years, they decided, because that's when physical fitness got really big, to have a 5K and a 10K run, and that was very well received, not only by the residents but by the city. We were one of the first ones to have a run like that. We decided, we looked at the North Lake, and you could start up here by the pagoda and go down to North Lake over the bridge and back again, and it was not quite a mile. So we made a run for the kids, and you had to be under, I forget what it is, 12 or something like that. And that, the residents and the families, I mean, we had more kids. The parents would run with the kids. The parents would the kids would stop, and the parents would call them, and they'd get down here to the finish line. They wouldn't know where to go. And but it's very, I mean, they really enjoyed it. The recreation things have really molded all the community together, and I think, you know, that's one of the things that I'm very supportive of, anything we can do to assist people, because you get people that when you get them out of their houses in swimming pools and in organized games and organized activities, 4th of July, you know, things like that. It just blends the community and takes everybody and just makes them one, and you know, that's why I think we've been so successful.
But plans and ideas can only go so far. The ultimate success of Woodbridge lies in the families who live here. In 1977, Ron and Joan Watanabe moved their young family to the North Quadrant of Woodbridge, and they've lived in the community ever since. Today, their son Scott is raising his young family in the very same neighborhood where he grew up.
We took a close look at Woodbridge, and at that time Woodbridge was, they were selling homes in the first quadrant, and we were fortunate enough to get a condo, a small condo, and that was our first home. But it was adequate, and it was quite a good experience buying the home. It was unique.
We noticed Irvine because we kept on going to the Pageant of Masters in Laguna Beach, and we bypass Irvine all the time. We're going, but there's nothing out here. As we moved out here in an apartment, we looked around and we thought, oh, this planned community is really good. I mean, it has all the things that we want. Again, our main motivation at the beginning was, where do we want to bring up our kids? Everybody was new, so it was kind of exciting. Everybody's helping each other out. Everybody's watching each other's kids. And it was just really nice. We knew a lot of people, but the nice thing is that we could just walk just a few minutes and walk to the lagoon, walk to the tennis courts. I wanted an area where my kids could just ride around on their bikes, and I felt very safe for them to just ride to school or walk to school.
First thing that comes to my mind is we just had a lot of other kids in the area, and it was good to meet all the other people your age, and we just would play every day and ride the bikes all around the community, and they're still my friends today.
We formed a co-op. There were many co-ops, and we would just babysit for each other. And we wouldn't exchange money. We exchanged hours, which we kept points on. And that was really nice, because each one of us are moving away from our families. There was not at that time, there was not an older generation here. Now, we are the older generation here, but there wasn't an older generation, so we all had to help each other out, which was very, very nice, and those people are still our friends to this day.
We were growing our family, and we were looking around for a place to settle down, and we naturally looked at Irvine because we were basically living here already, and Jenny had gone to college here, and I had grown up here, so it seemed like it was a good fit for both of us. And we looked all over the place, and it just happened to be that my mother was walking around the street, and she saw a for sale sign.
It was a little surreal, to be honest, because we didn't think that we would be in this neighborhood. It was just such a blessing that we were able to get this home.
It's a special place, and we just happened to move here. I think it's a special community and neighborhood because of all the great families that lived here and built up so many nice traditions and raised their kids here, and it's such a tight-knit community. And so, I think we came in here, we're just hoping to help continue that.
The kids that were raised in Woodbridge, a lot of them just want to come back. They must experience something very good here for young kids to come back into the same community that they were raised.
It's such a gift that Ron and Joan, our parents, live just right down the street, and to have that relationship with our boys is just a gift. Never thought that would happen, so it's just been amazing.
Well, I think that's every grandparent's dream, to be able to live close to your grandchildren, and we certainly enjoy that. We can walk over and see them, anytime we want, actually, so it's been a real blessing, and we're able to participate in watching them grow up, and it's just great.
I think it's been a great success. I think we appreciate it more now that we have a family and we kind of have kids, and we see how nice it is for them. And so I think, yes, I think everything has been, all the parks and all the neighborhood and all the activities the kids have. I mean, it's just kind of fun for us to see them go through that, and so yes, I think this is a perfectly planned community.
I think that The Woodbridge Village Association, that is a really good organization because they kept this community looking just almost like it was almost 40 years ago. And they've upgraded the parks, and now we're using the parks because we're taking our grandchildren to the parks. And it looks even better than when we first moved in here.
Definitely, I think 4th of July is so fun because the whole community gets together and it just makes it fun for everybody here. And I love seeing that. So, and of course Halloween is huge. As you can see, we're all kind of getting ready for that. And I just love that our community is so open to welcoming, again, other people coming to participate.
I think that's what is interesting about Woodbridge. I think coming into a new community, you're with people that are also starting in the same community. You really develop a sense of closeness. And I think everyone was very open and very friendly to each other. And I think that still holds up today. You know, if you go out on a walk around the community, everybody says hi to everybody else. There's just a certain sense that, you know, that you belong in this community and that it's fun to be a part of the community.
The village of Woodbridge has reached its 40th birthday, and the master plan that created it still works today. The village where you're never more than a 5-minute walk from a park or a pool is poised and ready to be a great place to live for the next 40 years.